Well, since this lockdown has precluded me from doing my job once again and left me with a lot of spare time on my hands, I thought I'd take this opportunity to comment on a recent law passed by the Australian government that went largely untouched by the mainstream media. So let me preface this entire video by saying I'm not normally a political analyst. I'm a comedian, and this video is my honest opinion. Although my neckbeard is growing and I'm becoming increasingly frustrated with my lack of human contact, so it seems natural for me to venture into the cesspool known as political commentary. The Online Safety Bill passed both Houses of Parliament on the 22nd of June, its goals being improving online safety for Australians and promoting online safety for Australians. Sounds good. I read the 200-page legislation, and most of it is not only good, but admirable. It grants greater powers to the eSafety Office and the eSafety Commissioner to tackle online threats such as cyberbullying against children, the unsolicited sharing of intimate images, and faster removal of illegal violent content. But part of the Commissioner's new role is to administer a complaint system directed towards cyber abuse material targeted at an Australian adult. Okay? We're all against cyber abuse. How do they define it? These are one of the standards. Intended to have an effect of causing serious harm to an Australian adult. Okay. Is joking about someone harmful? Roasting them? Criticising them? What constitutes serious harm? And have a look at this one. An ordinary, reasonable person would regard the material as being menacing, harassing, or offensive. Offensive. That's the word they're using. That's part of the criteria. I'm not sure if I'm reading this correctly, but is it now potentially illegal to offend someone online? But let's first look at the section that determines whether the material is offensive. Listen to this. The standards of morality, decency, and propriety generally accepted by reasonable adults. Morality and decency accepted by reasonable adults. I'm sorry, but this online safety bill just turned into the online Karen bill. 30 years ago, most reasonable adults would have thought that being gay was indecent. And that was only able to change with the contrarian speech of activists challenging that sense of morality. You can't have a multicultural society with only one standard of morality and decency. What the Christian and the Muslim community consider indecent is probably very different to what the woke progressive community consider indecent. And what about those of us who think both of those communities have a tendency to be a bit ridiculous? Whose moral standards constitutes that of the reasonable adult? This one safety commissioner gets to decide. And let me reiterate, I'm sure the vast majority of what the commissioner and the office does is fantastic, ensuring that cyber abuse against children and other exploitative material is taken down as swiftly as possible. That's a noble cause, and in my estimation, justifies this level of bureaucratic power. However, this section about cyber abuse against Australian adults crosses the line into authoritarianism. From my interpretation, anyone can make a complaint to the eSafety Office. If it's deemed to be cyber abuse, you have to take it down within 24 hours or it could result in tens of thousands of dollars of fines. If it's a repeat offence, it could end up in the federal court. I also can't see anything that grants the accused cyberbully any powers to appeal the edict. Whichever political party holds government gets to choose this commissioner. I'm sure they'd rebuff any accusations of said commissioner being potentially partisan. But let's be honest, that's a very real possibility. I'm sure the current commissioner is very well intentioned and competent at their job. It's also obviously in my best interest to get on their good side. But how can we ensure the next commissioner will be just as honourable? Or the one after that? Or the one after that? And so forth. This is an immense amount of power in the hands of one person. It's naive to think a conservative government wouldn't install a commissioner at least somewhat sympathetic to their sense of reasonable morality, and vice versa. After what's already happened to friendly Geordies, this, in my estimation, is further evidence of the government's blatant apathy towards your civil liberties and your right to speak as freely as possible. Not very liberal from a supposedly liberal government. While the bill was being discussed, one senator said this: "There's an important balance to be found here around free speech and protections against certain types of speech. We're concerned this bill represents a significant increase in the Safety Commissioner's discretion to remove material without commensurate checks and balances." That was Louise Pratt, a Labor senator. According to this article in Innovation Australia, the Greens will also move amendments requiring an independent review of the Act in 2 years' time, and that reasonable steps are taken to ensure the material being taken down is not removed unnecessarily, and for the impact on freedom of expression to be minimised. Well, a sincere thank you to the Greens for defending our freedom of expression. Honestly, I didn't think I'd ever be saying that, but I'm quite fond of many green things. Have it be known that on this draconian piece of legislation, Labor and the Greens express the strongest support for your civil liberties and your free speech. And yes, before you comment, I know that in Australia we don't technically have free speech. We have implied free speech, but we are supposed to be a liberal democracy. This really is nothing short of the snowflake Karen bill. It gives one person, probably upper class, probably highly or overly educated, definitely with their own biases, the power to determine whether what you say online constitutes cyber abuse based on what is considered indecent to a reasonable person. At the very least, let the commissioner be anyone from the nearest job site. That's a reasonable Australian, and I'd trust them far more to determine what is and is not cyber abuse. And again, let me be clear, this is not an attack on the eSafety Office or the Commissioner. It's a criticism of the new powers granted to the Commissioner. Of course, I'm in favour of protecting children from cyber abuse and employing stringent measures to remove violent, non-consensual, or otherwise illegal content from the internet, even if that does mean increasing state power. And thank you for already doing that. But I hold serious reservations about the section of cyber abuse against adults. But, as I said, I'm hardly a political analyst. So let me know if you think I missed anything or if you think I'm being unduly cynical. Links to all the sources in the YouTube description. If you are an Australian, I strongly recommend you read this piece of legislation, and I hope this video can produce healthy debate on the subject.